of you follow a talk like that. I'd like to just say ditto everything Wayne said and not speak a word. But before I start, I want to make a note about the pictures that you're seeing. It seems like every time I'm in a picture, I'm holding a baby, but I did more than hold a baby. I just wanted to point that out. My report from the mission trip revolves around that one particular family, Francisco and Guadalupe. It's a story that's 7 years in the making. It's the story about how the mission group watched and waited 7 years for that seed that was sown to finally bear fruit. And Elaine and I had the privilege of being dead center when that miracle happened. It's the story about Francisco, his wife Guadalupe, and their 4 family members. 7 years ago, Dave Nelsestew, our former intern, and some of the mission group were walking back from the local store in Colonia, Lona Alpo. When they were walking, they came upon a woman, Guadalupe, and started a conversation up with her. Their conversation was cut short as Guadalupe had to go quickly. A quick exit as she caught sight of her husband, who had obviously not approved of her talking with the gringos. They noticed a bit later, however, that Guadalupe was following them as they were recruiting children for Bible school. The following year, Guadalupe brought her kids to Bible school at a neighbor's home in Colonia Loma Alto. A Spanish-English Bible was given to Guadalupe when she attended that Bible school with her kids. Over the next 6 years, Guadalupe's husband Francisco was only seen 3 times. Each time he was spotted, he was noticeably angry. The group noticed Guadalupe was very reserved any time her husband was around even. Some Mexican men turned to drugs and alcohol when the frustrations of their daily life got the best of them. Francisco had obviously turned to anger and control when he felt inadequate and unable to provide for his family. Guadalupe physically shuddered when he was close by. The mission group heard him shout angrily at his children, and as Elaine mentioned, the dogs even cowered any time people came close to them. Francisco was angry at the world, and the look in his eyes sent that message loud and clear to the mission group. Now we fast forward 6 years to the last day of the mission trip in 2010. One of the members of the mission group had decided she wanted to give a quilt to Guadalupe and her family. When the group went to Guadalupe's home, Francisco met them at the fence. The gate to their home was still shut, but there was definitely something different with Francisco. He no longer looked angry. When Dave went to talk with him, Francisco opened up for the first time since the group's initial interaction with Guadalupe 6 years earlier. Francisco said, "You really do help people, don't you?" Dave told him that the group was God's helping hands in his community. Francisco continued his conversation with Dave. "It's such a struggle when I'm not able to take care of my family. Would it be possible for you to help me buy the lumber to fix my home?" Dave told Francisco the group's last day in Matamoros, but then they didn't have any money left. However, the group would be back the next year and would plan to give him the materials and help him build his home. The 2 men shook hands. This handshake in itself was a miracle, as no one had been permitted inside the family gate, and there had previously been no interaction with Francisco. When we arrived at Francisco and Guadalupe's home on the first day of the mission trip this year, Dave was overwhelmed with what he saw. As Elaine indicated, Francisco had somehow come up with the money to get the lumber and build the foundation for the new walls of his home. Upon seeing Dave and our mission group, Francisco immediately greeted us, anxious to tell Dave he had a vision of what his house was going to look like right after the mission group left last year. He had proceeded to build the foundation of his new home on faith that Dave and the rest of the group would be back again this year to help. When I entered through the family gate the first time, I had no idea of all this history behind that moment. I was immediately welcomed by the family, and Francisco's son Pablo and I bonded immediately. I asked to hold the baby and was allowed to do so without hesitation. Plans were made to go to the lumberyard the following day and purchase materials needed to complete the walls. The miracle continued. During construction, I was working on the east side of the house with Francisco. At one point, I turned around and inadvertently bumped into Francisco. Francisco grabbed my hand and the two of us started to dance to the music that was coming from the inside of the house. I relayed this encounter to the group that evening when we did our debriefing from the day. Dave could hardly believe this had happened and proceeded to give me this background on how angry Francisco had been. Little did I know I'd been dancing with somebody that was so angry at the world. To me, he was not angry at all, but my instant friend. The miracle continued. After the second day of construction, it was certain that the walls were going to be completed. Great, but what are new walls if there's no roof to protect them? I pulled Dave aside and asked if we were planning to do the roof. He indicated that no mention had been made to do the roof, and that we had to be very careful not to move too fast. After all, this change in Francisco was a very delicate situation, and Dave did not want to risk alienating him after he'd come so far. Dave said I needed to be patient and pray for the roof. It was meant to be. God would provide the sign. I went to bed that night totally defeated. Francisco needed a roof and we could provide it. Why did I have to be patient? You all know me, huh? Well, when I finally got over my frustration, I prayed. I prayed hard and I prayed sincerely that God would allow us the opportunity to help Francisco, and asked that he give us a sign that it was okay to proceed without jeopardizing the relationship with Francisco. The next morning at breakfast, Dave walked into the room smiling. He told me he'd had a dream. He saw a neighbor helping Francisco build the roof. My tears flowed instantly as I felt the sign had been prayed for. But Dave still cautioned me that we'd have to talk it over with Francisco before we could proceed. Okay, I guess I could be patient a little longer. I left it in Dave's hands to bring up the subject about the roof to Francisco. If he approved, we'd proceed. Well, before Dave had the chance to bring up the roof, Francisco asked Dave if we were going to have time to build his roof. Dave looked at me and winked. We'd received our sign. Dave asked Francisco if he had an idea of how he wanted the roof to be built. Before long, we were back at the lumberyard purchasing the materials needed for the roof. God provided, and the miracle continued. As if that wasn't enough, more miracles were to come. On the last day of our construction, Francisco insisted that we did not work. Instead, as Elaine mentioned, he wanted to make us tortillas and wanted time together with the group. We did Bible school with the whole group of neighbor kids and sang songs in both English and Spanish. Francisco also requested that Dave say a prayer to anoint his new home. Francisco just couldn't get over how we gringos would help the poor, why the gringos would eat with the poor, why they would bond with the poor. Why wouldn't we? As Elaine mentioned, Guadalupe's favorite Bible verse, without even hesitating when she was asked, was Matthew 4:4. Man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. That just says it all. So if you look at these pictures, you could see this family of 6 lived in a home. It was 10 by 12. They had a dirt floor. They did dishes in a sink outside that was probably something that we wouldn't even use with our cattle. The broken chair was our sawhorse. The yard that the kids played in was dirt, but they have smiles on their face. And if you see Francisco, who's the guy with the blue hat, there's a smile on his face, and he's no longer the man that's angry. So Elaine and I both thank you for all the prayers for our group, for our safety, for your financial support, and all the love that you showed through us that made this mission trip possible. The theme for the A mission this year was short-term missions and long-term change. During our last debriefing together, Dave Nelson Stewart asked each one of us what we were going to take back from the mission trip. My response was that I wanted to make sure the plight of our Mexican brothers and sisters would not be forgotten, that word of their current situation would be brought to the members of Pecatonica Parish. I wanted our Mexican family members to feel that they would be remembered in prayer, even though we are physically more than 1,500 miles apart. So Elaine and I would like to capitalize on the long-term change portion of the mission trip theme and challenge each one of you in the Pecatonica Parish. If you are thankful, you have the luxury of turning on a faucet and getting a cold glass of clean water to drink. If you are thankful, you have a private bathroom and have the luxury of toilet paper and flushing water. If you are thankful that you can open your refrigerator and find food enough to eat and feed your family. If you are thankful, you have a solid floor to sweep instead of dirt. If you are thankful, you don't have holes in your walls of your home patched by sheets of newspaper and writing paper. If you are thankful that you can take a warm shower without having to heat your water and physically carry it to an external building. If you are thankful, you live in a country where you don't have to worry about you or your family members being shot by drug-related violence on a daily basis. Each week, if you are thankful, we challenge you to donate a few coins to help, quote, change the current situation for our brothers and sisters in Mexico. Here is an opportunity for all of us to be the hands and feet of God to help others who are struggling, but whose faith is so very deep. Perhaps you can buy one less cup of coffee or one less soda and donate the money instead to feed others. 100% of monies collected in the change containers at all 4 churches in the parish will be sent directly to the families in Matamoros so they can purchase food. We take so much for granted here in the United States. We ask you to think about it, pray about it, and respond as God leads you. With everyone working together, long-term change can happen. We will have a poster in the back of all 4 churches. There will also be a coin jar there for the upcoming year. And each time we have monies that are available, we will send it off to Matamoros in order for them to buy food. Elaine also brought back candy. There's a candy dish back there, so please, as you leave today, help yourself to some Mexican candy. So thank you for all your prayers where we gone. We could feel it down there. It was a dangerous, dangerous place, and we never once felt that we weren't being protected. So thank you.